Massachusetts Treasurer Deb Goldberg is our guest. Let's go on the record. With record revenue in state coffers, Beacon Hill facing questions of how best to put that money to work, or in some cases, give it back. We'll crunch the numbers with the constitutional officer who oversees it all.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR. Hi there, everybody. I'm Ben Cimino. Ed Harding's off this Sunday morning. I'm joined by News Center 5 political reporter Sharman Sacchetti and our guest, State Treasurer Deb Goldberg. She's a Democrat, sworn into her third term as treasurer last week. She's a Brookline resident and once served as a member of the Select Board. She holds degrees from Boston University, Boston College, and Harvard. Treasurer Goldberg, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with both of you. It's
Welcome.
A lot of fun.
Welcome. Well, let's start off by talking some revenue. The state has billions, $7 billion in the rainy day fund and billions more available. In fact, so much money the state is flush with that they gave back $3 billion to taxpayers under that little-known law, Chapter 62F. So our first question is, looking at the current numbers, could taxpayers see another round of refunds this year?
Well, first, it's really much too early to make that determination because, as you've seen, things are a little volatile in Washington, D.C. And in fact, as Janet Yellen warned on Thursday, the debt ceiling has come into question, and that could seriously have an impact on our economy. So we wouldn't be looking at that right now. But one thing I want to say about
when
the
would you know? When would you know?
We will probably know in May, around May. We don't do those numbers. That's Department of Revenue and the Auditor's Office, but we will be seeing those reports.
And we've seen quite a few bills filed already this session to sort of change how that money is distributed to taxpayers and who would get more and who would get less. Do you think the law should be changed?
Well, before we hop into that, I want to make a little bit of a comment about the Rainy Day Fund. The Rainy Day Fund is for rainy days. Now, not necessarily like today, but that is essential that we had rebuilt the Rainy Day Fund because the low number was the reason our bonds were downgraded when I first arrived in 2014 and why our outlook was switched to positive this year was the rebuilding of the Rainy Day Fund, among other fiscal policies.
You mentioned the Rainy Day Fund. When Governor Baker left office, he said there's $7 billion in the Rainy Day Fund. There's an additional $5 billion or so surplus. Should any of that money, the surplus money, go back to taxpayers?
So the surplus will, again, I'm sounding too technical, and I'm usually a lot more fun than this, but the surplus will be what we look at as we're moving forward as they begin to decide on the budget, how they're going to be budgeting for this year. And it will go towards different kinds of funds. You have to hit a certain number of revenue in order to do 62F.
Well, let's come back to 62F for 1 second, because I think a lot of taxpayers, it was hard to find somebody who wasn't happy with that check they got in the mail.
I didn't find anybody who wasn't happy, including my kids.
The Speaker of the House, Ron Mariano, has said he might be interested in making some changes that Sharman alluded to. The way it worked this time around is everybody got a flat percentage. It was around 15, 16% of what they paid in taxes.
Right.
Should that be changed, or is, the flat percentage of you get back whatever you paid, a percentage of it, the fairest way to do it?
So you're asking me my opinion because unfortunately I don't get to even comment on that. But I think that we need to look at the fairness of it, and I personally would love to see what they are looking at in terms of how they think it should be changed. But given...
Do you think the law is unfair the way it's written right now?
Well, it was such a surprise to everyone. I mean, not to me, because my office had not seen the report last spring and knew it was happening. But given how infrequently it happens, I'm thinking that probably we might have wanted to think about how we could help people who were truly in need and particularly who had not yet recovered from the pandemic.
And knowing we have the millionaires tax as well, that's also going to contribute to some complexities, I think.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to sports betting if we can. It's about to become a reality in Massachusetts after what some would say was a long time coming. In-person bets being taken by the end of the month and then online bets by March. Do you have any projections as to what that revenue stream will look like? And do you think it should be earmarked for a certain category of state spending?
So, again, you're asking me to speculate.
We are.
I don't get to make that decision. That's the legislature. So I have not studied what sports betting will generate in revenue. I think it's a lot less than what people are anticipating. I've heard numbers between 35 million, 50 million. We have to remember something. The lottery is in my office. 100% of the profits, quote unquote, of the lottery are distributed to every single community throughout the state to benefit those who live there. Sports betting is a for-profit business. They're in it to make money. So the tax revenue that they'll pay is merely a drop in the bucket to what they will ultimately make. And so my concern, my personal concern, is the impact of online and in-person sports betting on the lottery. The lottery is what really benefits. We give back over $1 billion to the local communities.
All right. Well, speaking of that, you oversee the most successful lottery in the country. Scratch ticket sales, we've seen them slumping lately. But giant jackpots with Mega Million and Powerball, they have helped hold the line. That money, of course, goes to local aid. Cities and towns always need more money, of course. Does the calculation for how much is provided need to be updated with the surge in revenue from the lottery and beyond?
Well, first of all, you are correct. Scratch tickets are on the decline. And in fact, even with the large jackpots, we still have had a decline in profits, even with those large jackpots, which didn't used to happen. And that is being seen across the country. What we believe is that the impact on the economy from inflation and the cost of goods for everybody is actually impacting lottery ticket sales. And so consequently, we are very, very cautiously watching this because we are concerned. I was a local elected official. I know what I needed that money for. Back in 2015, remember the 110 inches? Well, that paid to remove that snow.
So maybe it would make sense, though, then for the sports betting money to be earmarked to go also toward local aid.
Well, that would be great. I mean, as someone who constantly worries about local communities, but I don't think that that's going to happen. I think it will end up in the general fund, and or maybe it should be used for. I know there was a proposal to allow the Mass State Lottery to go online, which did not pass. Because let's not forget, we're going to be competing with sports betting. They have lots of money to advertise. I have the lowest ad budget in the country for a business our size. We should be online too.
Well, speaking of money that's going to the general fund, the millionaire's tax is now on the books. It took effect January 1. It was approved by the voters in November. The advocates for it promised that it would go to certain categories, transportation and education. That's going to be ultimately up to the legislature. Do you think they need to make that a hard earmark? And also, did you support the millionaire's tax?
I voted for the millionaire's tax because I strongly feel that being in the role where the Mass School Building Authority is in my office, and we very much study the schools, and we know the condition of the schools, and we know the challenges for the schools. Our kids are the future of Massachusetts. We don't have oil fields. We don't have certain things that other states can rely on. It is our brains. And so education is probably the top priority for our state. It's why I created my Baby Step Savings Plan. We did a job study.
So they should earmark the money. You think it should be a hard earmark?
Well, I know that what the legislature will be doing is they will be looking at the funds. And by the way, those are going to be variable every year. They're not a definite amount of money. So you have to be careful how you allocate it, because if you build a program based upon those funds and they don't come in the following year, then the burden will fall on the
That's how it was sold to voters.
Well, I understand that. And generally, it will be used for education. I, for one, am hoping that it could be used for certain things in terms of the physical plant for the school buildings. And transportation is something that I think is going to get a huge focus in this new administration on how do we finally straighten out the transportation
We
systems.
all know that the T needs it.